Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they moved through their pain, they realized that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesandgrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Heroes in Grief today, and thanks a lot for joining us. And today I have Charlene Lam with me, and Charlene is part of the Get Griefy collective, and we talk about that a little bit here. Get Griefy is, we have a partnership with them, and so you hear about that Get Griefy magazine, and the collective is a bunch of grief educators, workers, people in the grief space who are helping people in grieving situations. And they are some of the best of the best. So it's amazing to be part of that. If you'd like to be part of that, you can always message me and I will let you know how to do that. Just email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com and I can let you know about that, or if you know someone who may be interested. So starting off with that, but Charlene, welcome to Heroes in Grief. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Oh, it's great to connect with you.
Thank you. Where are you located in the world?
I am in Lisbon in Portugal.
Oh.
I'm originally from New York City, but I'm very happy to call Portugal home.
Very, very good. Well, we have a rainy day here in Niagara Falls today, so wet, rainy, cold. So I hope it's better in Portugal.
It is a bit drizzly, it is a bit humid, and we have these very charming traditional sidewalks called calçadas portuguesas, which get very, very slippery.
Oh, boy.
When it rains. So if you come to visit Lisbon, and Tom, you're certainly invited, as is everyone who's listening, pack good shoes and be careful if it rains here.
Good advice. Good advice. Thank you. Charlene, I appreciate you reaching out to me to come on the podcast. And I was looking at some of the things you're doing. You're a grief coach, a speaker, an author. You have a very successful TED Talk that's on your site and everything. People, if you want to check it out while we're talking here, just go to charlenelam.com, and it's Charlene, CHARLENE, and Lam is LAM.com. All right. So you can look at things there, and you can even sign up for a newsletter, and you can check out some of the great things she's doing as we talk here. So, Charlene, what got you involved in doing what you're doing?
Oh, like many of us, right? We experienced a major loss. And for me, the one that I talk about the most is losing my mother. January 2013, she died very suddenly from a stroke. We didn't know at the time that it was a stroke, but she was just gone. And I often describe it as being blindsided by her loss. I was living in London at the time, and my mother was in New York. If you're just listening to the audio version, I'm Chinese American. My mother was also a proud Chinese American New Yorker, and she had just recently moved back to New York and bought her dream house there just a couple of years before she died. So when she died, I had not just the grief to grapple with and the reality of this enormous loss, but I also had the practical issues. As an only child, I knew, oh my gosh, like I'm going to have to figure out what to do with her house. I'm going to have to decide what to do with all her paperwork and her accounts. My aunt, my mother's sister, was my co-executor, but I knew that most of the decisions would be mine. And that consumed my life for the next couple of years. I put everything aside. I put my work on hold. I feel like I put my marriage on hold and flew back and forth, going to my mother's house, trying to figure out what to do with it, getting pressure from some people to sell it, and then getting pressure from other people to keep it. And ultimately, I couldn't afford to keep it. So then I had the problem that a lot of people have reported having, where it felt impossible to let go of my mother's belongings. They were all I had left of her. And suddenly all these everyday objects felt really, really precious. And my maybe unusual solution was curating and exhibitions. So are you familiar with the term curating? A lot of my people are like museum and art people. So they're like, yes, of course. And then other people say, wait, what do you mean by curating?
No, I think it's a good idea to explain that for people out there, for sure.
Yeah. So curating, really in the last decade, we use it for so many things, right? We can curate our Instagram feeds. We can curate restaurant menus. We can curate our homes. And to me, curating just means choosing with intention. Curating made sense for me as a lens to use because when my mother died, I was in London and I was actually curating exhibitions. So more of that kind of classical sense of using curating in the setting of a museum or an art gallery. I was working with ceramicists and artists and helping them to show and sell their work and curating these exhibitions that featured their beautiful work. And that was already kind of a creative practice, a way for me to make choices that I was already familiar with. And I think out of desperation, really, I decided, well, what if I curated an exhibition about my mother? If I were to curate an exhibition about my mother, which 100 objects would I choose? And that question changed everything for me. Right? As a grieving daughter, impossible. Impossible. But as a curator, suddenly it felt different. It felt creative. It felt meaningful to make these choices. And it just felt more doable.
That is amazing.
To make these choices.
That is great how you brought in the essence of who you are into this and everything. So that is great. I know we're going to get a lot more into it. What is your mom's name?
Her name is Marilyn.
Love to say their name.
Not named. Yeah, though, interestingly, we can go into this as well, where like I've been, I guess, working with grief for over a decade. And as the grief field has changed and evolved, especially after COVID, I find some of the questions and some of the practices that we use to be not as inclusive as I would like to see them. So,
what's an
like,
example
I
of
understand
that for you?
Well, this is like a bit of like my pet peeve kind of thing. I like the way you asked it. At least it was a question. But I've been in grief environments or grief groups where it's a directive. Tell me their name. And to me, that doesn't feel like an invitation.
Yeah.
It feels like a directive. And my approach to grief support is very much about meeting the person, the grieving person, where they are, right? There might be a whole range of reasons why someone might not want to name their person. I've had people say, well, no, if someone had insisted that I name my father, I would have fallen apart, right? That someone might say, you know what, naming them would bring up so much for me. And I want to have the choice of whether I want to go there.
So perhaps my question should be, if you wouldn't mind, would you like to tell us your mom's name?
I've changed my own phrasing to that, to like, would you like to share their name? And as I've been learning too, that from a cultural perspective, that there are a whole range of cultures with different relationships to names. That there are cultures that have name taboos where you're not supposed to name the person after they died. And for me personally, as I've grappled with like being an Asian immigrant, being from a family of immigrants, I don't necessarily want to share my grandmother's name, for instance. I don't even know how to pronounce her name. I don't particularly want someone else mangling the pronunciation of her Chinese name.
Right.
Right. And then in other cultures, you might not even use the name when you're talking about an elder. So it might feel strange to say, well, why would I share their name with someone I don't even really know and who didn't know them?
What great awareness. I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's great
So
to
like not to school or scold anyone, right? But like I always feel
no.
like the intentions are good, but it's definitely something that I've been sitting with, oh gosh, how much do I want to name this kind of experience that I've had and that I've seen
Yeah.
in different grief spaces?
Yeah, if there's one thing that I understand and learned from grief educating and learning that in a course is that it's surrounded in love when you're
Mhm.
approaching someone in grief and allowing them to dictate and drive the situation where they are. And that is just another element of that, I think, that being sensitive to all their cultural things as well and understanding there's a lot to it and to really understand them before you maybe get in depth in all of that. And so you don't offend them. And it's a good lesson for anyone around a grieving person for sure. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like no matter what our backgrounds are, it's been a learning process for me as well.
Yeah.
So intentions and invitations, I guess, like that's definitely a recurring theme in my work.
And I'll tell you too, as you talk about all the belongings and things, my son Jeff lived with us. And so we didn't touch his room for probably a year, at least a year. And then eventually I had to clean it out, and I did. And I've kept everything. Everything is in bins in the basement. And so this is helpful to me. I'm anxious to hear about how you approach this and what you do with people and your thoughts on all of this. I've thought about bringing Jeff's sister down and going through, it's
Mhm.
basically clothes, what he has, and so
Yes.
going through the clothes, would you like this shirt? Would you like this? And that type of thing. We just haven't gotten around to that. And so, yeah, I'm interested to hear. So,
Yeah.
w-
It's a million decisions,
yeah,
right?
yep.
A million decisions at a point where many of us don't feel equipped to make those decisions. We might have kind of grief brain, our overall capacity to do things on a day-to-day basis might be compromised. And I think that's partially what feels so cruel about our experiences of grieving sometimes, when we're kind of pushed to do more when we actually have less capacity to do things.
hmm
And these decisions are so potentially emotionally loaded. And thank you so much for sharing a bit of your experience with Jeff's belongings. And I know you've had a range of different losses. And I think that's what I find so fascinating about working with the belongings and meaningful objects, because the circumstances of your loss, your relationship with your person, your personal circumstances, and the context, they're all going to shape how you relate to the belongings and what you do with the stuff, and whether you even have time to consider what you do with the things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's any rush in anything ever. And I think that was something that someone said along the lines when I was in my early grief, and it didn't bother Judy or I having the room up there as it was. We talked about it and we said we're going to have to get to that sooner or later. And eventually we did. But yeah, there's no time period on that. Do what's comfortable as long as it's not interfering with your life in some way. I think it's okay
Yeah.
to leave things the way they are until you're ready. And yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean,
oh, go ahead.
I'll just first, I just wanted to name too that if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I didn't have that time,
Yeah.
right? Or I wasn't given that time, that I had the luxury and the privilege of throwing money at the problem.
Hmm.
My mother saved well for retirement, and I burned through some of those retirement savings, and I burned through some of my own savings to buy myself time to try to keep her house and to give myself time to process this loss. So I didn't feel rushed into cleaning out and making all these decisions. But I have colleagues and clients who only had 2 weeks
Hmm.
or a month to clear out a place. So if you have those resources, yes, take that time. Call in all the resources, throw money at the problem if you can, call in friends and family who can help. And I want to acknowledge that not everyone is in that circumstance.
Yeah.
And I still believe that you can curate, that you can still use that lens of curating, that it doesn't matter if you've already gotten rid of the things, that you can still use meaningful objects and that lens of curating as a way to process your grief and to explore what your relationship with your person might look like now.
That's a great point in case where people are listening who those things are gone now and what do they do, right? Feeling
Oh,
regretful for that or something, right?
yeah, that can be so painful.
Yeah. So in the midst of where you were in the story and with your
Oh,
mom, what is there more to that portion of it, or did you then just realize that this was your strength and your desire and feeling the need to help others in this? How did that progress through that?
yeah, I would say the first 2 years or so after she died was all about dealing with the death in her house. I kept her house for over a year. I sold it for, I guess at a loss in
Mm.
terms of the money that she put into it. But about a year and a half after she died, and then 2.5 years after she died, I actually presented my first exhibition with her belongings. Because at first, that question about what would I curate, it was really theoretical. Like, yes, I would pick up things in our house and put it on a shelf. I actually had a box labeled 100 objects, and I would set aside items that were like, oh, yeah, no, this one's really important. That would definitely go in the exhibition. And I would put it in the box, and think about, like, oh, okay, can I bring this back to London with me? Will it fit in my suitcase? But it really was a theoretical question. It was an imaginary exhibition. But we're speaking now in October 2025. And this month marks the 10-year mark of that first exhibition that I did with my mother's belongings. And from the start, from that first exhibition, I realized, oh, this is so powerful and helpful for me, right? It helped to mark this transition point between being so focused on the fact that she had died to saying, okay, I've now sold her house. I've done the majority of the paperwork. Now I can shift to talking about how she lived,
Mm.
talk about who she was in life, and like what I want people to know about her. So that first exhibition was called Proof of Life, because prior to that, I really felt like it was about proof of death.
Mm. Yeah.
I was carrying her death certificate around. I was having to call the credit card companies and explain to people what had happened. And this exhibition marked that turning point for me. But also, it was so interesting to be witnessed by my creative community in London and to really have this memorial that felt right for me and felt like something that I wanted to give my mother versus the official memorial, which, is always, not always, but frequently a bit odd,
Mhm.
a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's kind of organized by a whole bunch of people. Whereas I got to curate this exhibition, I got to decide what got included. And also from the very start, people said, can I add something to the exhibition?
Hmm. Fred,
The space was,
was it friends
Mhm.
and relatives and things, or outsiders?
Well, it was, the exhibition was in a space in London where I had previously done exhibitions with the work of ceramicists and such. So it was a space that I knew. And it was downstairs from a bunch of creative studios. So some of the people who came to the exhibition were designers I'd already worked with in a different capacity. And I remember this glass artist said, I have things from my mother in my studio.
Hmm.
Can I show them to you? And she brought down a cigarette lighter and a kind of cloth bag that had a label with her mother's name on it.
Hmm.
And we had these extra glass cases. So I was like, can I include them in the exhibition? Let's co-create something. And it was amazing to me, even if it wasn't objects, that people came to the show and shared their own stories of grief, of loss, of what they kept, of what they wish they still had, of the way that they would pick up a jade bracelet from my mother's house and say, oh, a family member had this,
Mhm.
or, oh, I have this association with jade. And I was just so amazed and touched by that willingness to share. And I saw very quickly how it was healing and helpful for me, but also helpful for other people.
Yeah. Hello, friends. I just wanted to take a brief break here in the podcast to make you aware of a very exciting partnership that Heroes in Grief has just formed, and that is with Get Griefy Magazine. I'm going to let their founder and editor-in-chief, Kara Sanchez, tell you all about it.
Hey, Heroes in Grief listeners. Life after loss isn't easy, but it can be colorful and full of possibilities. Meet Get Griefy Magazine, a vibrant resource filled with inspiring stories of life after loss, expert advice, and voices from everyday grievers and thought leaders. Together, they're here to help guide you toward the side of life that's left to be lived fully and authentically. Dive into Get Griefy for free on Issue or snag a print copy on Amazon. Connect with us on Instagram at Get Griefy Magazine or visit getgriefymagazine.com to explore, join our thriving small business collective, or discover advertising opportunities. Let's embrace life after loss, boldly and together.
And now back to our episode. So the exhibition, do you have, do you speak there? Are you talking during it about the items there, or how does that all work?
Yeah, I am. I've done exhibitions in the decade plus since my mother died, different times. I've done them as part of a design residency in Toronto. I did an installation at Endwell, which is an end of life kind of conference that happens in Los Angeles. And so I've done this at various times throughout the decade, and they do change in theme. And I remember in Toronto, someone asked, so are you just going to place the objects and then leave? And I realized, oh, no, actually, me being there is actually a really important part of it, right?
Yeah.
That I am curator, I am there as grieving daughter and fellow griever, and people ask me questions about the objects. Yes, I'll have a museum kind of label explaining which object I've chosen and a little bit about the story behind it. But it's really me being there to tell the story, telling my story as an invitation for someone else to share their story.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that being in person is super powerful because we can actually make eye contact.
Yeah.
Right? We can look into each other's eyes. And I think as a grieving person, so often we've experienced sharing our story and having someone look away.
Yeah. What a
So
great
not looking
way.
away.
Yeah, what a great way for people to not feel obligated or anything like that, to be able to open up when they experience something. They may come in not expecting to be talking about their situation at all, and something will cause that to happen. And so yeah, I think it's a great way of breaking down those barriers sometimes that people have in grief, that they just can't start getting it out or talking about it, and the you know unobtrusive nature of all of that, just to come in and then experience something and allow it to happen. That's so beautiful.
Yes. I love the way you named experience because I do think it's experiential. And that's really important to me, that when I give a talk, when I do a workshop, I don't want to just talk at someone,
Mm-hmm.
right? That it's like, yes, I want to educate because psychoeducation, informing people about like what grief really might look like for them, what contemporary grief theory says, that's super important to me. But my goal is really to provide something experiential,
Mm-hmm.
to have them experience, an invitation to share. Again, that's an invitation. So they can always say no. They can do what feels comfortable for them. And that they have the experience of someone who wants to hear it, who meets their eyes, who nods, who accepts whatever they're going to share.
Yeah.
And I think it's an experience that unfortunately a lot of people don't receive. And I find that carries through this approach that I want to offer in everything that I do,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is in the exhibitions where I invite people to come and see the exhibition, but I also often invite people to bring an object to add to the exhibition. I photograph it, I include it in the collection, or they can just tell me the story of it. And I also host a free monthly grief gathering where that's also the invitation. We meet on Zoom and people are invited to bring an object to share because it's, again, that invitation that we don't often get, especially beyond the first couple of months, right?
Mm, what a
So,
great way to
so,
keep.
so I'm like, Tom, if you want to share, I want to hear
Oh, it's
it.
keeping people alive, and that is so awesome. That is great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you work with people one-on-one to go through this process? And of course, that can take on many different forms, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. So as a grief coach, I do work with people one-to-one. I also do group programs and courses and talks and workshops. So I've seen the power of course, a group environment. Um, and I find that people sometimes really want private one-to-one support. So I have my Curating Grief framework. Curating Grief is like my overall philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
That idea that we are all curators after a loved one dies, regardless of whether you have physical stuff or not. And that the lens of curating can be useful through a whole range of circumstances that people might have. And I'm developing this signature method called the 10 object method, where my original question started with 100 objects. But for a lot of people who are closer to the loss or are not creatives or curators by profession, 100 objects feels really daunting.
Yeah.
So with 10 objects, I can narrow down that creative question, that creative brief, to which 10 objects would you like to share? And that kind of forms the framework for working in a workshop environment or during a retreat, but also in one-to-one work. It helps to focus what we do during a session, right? That idea that like you said, how do you even start?
Mm-hmm.
If I was to ask you, tell me about your person, tell me about your loss. But when I say, would you like to share an object that reminds you of your person, is significant to you, or represents the grief or loss that you're sitting with right now, that gives us a starting point, something that focuses the conversation, something that for those of us who are less emotional processors to actually access some of the emotions that are harder to name. So yes, to your question, I do work one-on-one with people.
Yeah, and you can take, for those who don't have the items anymore, you could take the memories and curate the memories, the thoughts of the items maybe that they think of, or the experiences that they had, right?
Yes. Like a question I might ask is there a certain facet of the person that you want to have witnessed or acknowledged? Or is there a particular story that you really want to spotlight? And from there, is there a particular object that helps to illustrate that story or to illustrate that facet or characteristic of your person?
Now, would you have a way then of them preserving all of that? Like, do you say maybe we would put this on a Zoom call and have it on video then, or some other way? Do you have a way that they can preserve that?
Yeah. So I think when we think of a gallery space, right? Like, where does your mind go when I ask you, like, Tom, what do you think of when I say a gallery space?
Well, two different things. We have the Albright Knox Art Gallery here, so I think of that kind of thing. But then I also think of like a gallery on a call or something where there's many different people and there could be items, I think, and what you're speaking of, something like that.
Yes, yes, exactly. Right. That first exhibition that I did was actually in a gallery space because I had access to a gallery space and I already had that creative practice. Some people actually do that. So people come to me at various times. So someone who did have access to her brother's things, and was already very comfortable with creativity and with topics of grief and death. She curated a whole gallery space as part of her brother's memorial. And there were long tables with things from his childhood, from his work life, and even the clothes that he wore on the day he died. And for her and her family, it was a way for people at the memorial to really get a sense of who her brother was. So that was her gallery space, a big physical gallery space. For other people, a gallery space might look like a book. I've had clients say, you know what, I want to just make a book for my nephews and nieces and my grandchildren so that they know who my husband was. So her book was her gallery space. For others, it might be an Instagram account. It might be a website, right? It might be on Canva, or sometimes I use a tool called Padlet, especially when I do workshops or talks where people are invited online to contribute items. It's a way for people to upload images, and we see this kind of gallery populate with everyone's items, which is really special. But I think that's the thing of like, well, a gallery can be many forms. And you get to decide what's right for you, right? And also, who's the audience for this exhibition?
Yeah.
Is it a public gallery? Is the gallery just for your family? Is your gallery just for you? Those are all options, right? Those are all kinds of questions that I ask when I'm putting together an exhibition, regardless of what kind of exhibition it is. And that's how I bring these kind of questions and framework to grievers in a way that feels maybe more creative, more meaningful, and hopefully even fun.
Yeah, and comfortable for them. Whatever their strengths are, maybe they're into the online things and tuned to that. Maybe they're not, and so that's okay because it fits all of them. You're hurting my brain right now, by the way.
Oh no, why?
No,
Why?
no, because I'm kind of a visionary type person. So when I hear things like this, that I can see so many avenues in, I start thinking like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. And then, so I just start expanding. So it's a good thing. Don't worry.
I'm like, well, we could definitely do a brainstorm. Like, it's interesting how the work has evolved over time. And my brain's like that too, where I'm like, oh my God, it's a spider web. Like suddenly like, it's gone in 8 different directions. And okay, let's focus.
Yeah, I love it because I think there's so many possibilities, and that's great, Oh, amazing. So what else? You are an author as well. What have you written?
So I published my first book, Curating Grief, A Creative Guide to Choosing What to Keep After a Loved One Dies, last year, end of 2024. You have it here.
Mm-hmm.
It has a bottle of soy sauce on the front, and it's on a white kind of plinth or like a white display pedestal, the type that you might see in a museum or in a art gallery space. And it was very important to me to have that bottle of soy sauce on there.
Now you got to tell the soy sauce story then.
Oh, I talk about the soy sauce so much. It's in my signature talk, it's in my TEDx talk, but it's because, right, I'm really fascinated by the role that these different objects play for us in life, but also in grief. And the soy sauce represents the bottle of soy sauce in my mother's kitchen. And how this very everyday item suddenly became incredibly special to me after she died.
Mm-hmm.
And it also represented the difficulty I had because I couldn't throw it away.
Yeah.
It was this, like half empty bottle of soy sauce, and I was sitting with her cooking oils, and I couldn't. It represented so many things to me, and it, sometimes I would look at it and think, it still has my mother's fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
How can I throw it away? How is it that this bottle of soy sauce outlived her?
Yeah.
Outlasted her? How can I throw it away? So in that context of the kind of impossible situations that we might find ourselves in, or surreal situations we find ourselves in as grieving people, the soy sauce represents so much of that for me. It also anchored kind of stories and feelings about guilt, regret. So there was so much attached to this simple bottle of soy sauce. So that's why I talk about it so much. And that's why I name it in my talks and put it on the bottom, on the cover of my book. And I find that food and soy sauce, like, a lot of people can relate to it on different levels. For someone else, let's say, oh, for me, it was olive oil. Oh, for me, it was my Nona's tomato sauce, right? There's usually something that people can relate to. Oh, yes, no, it was the box of cocoa powder in my grandmother's kitchen because she made the most amazing chocolate pudding. And that was the thing that I put off moving for the longest time.
Yeah. Charlene, you do a great job of welcoming people and their crazy thoughts during grief, because everybody thinks, that's crazy, that's nuts, or what, just throw it away, or whatever. And no, these things happen to all of us. And these things, the mind, the grief mind is crazy. You think the craziest things, or you think that what you're doing or thinking about is wrong or anything like that. And it's just not, these are all normal things that happen when you go through it.
Yes. And it's so important to validate it,
is.
right?
Yeah.
I have an online course called Sorting the Stuff of Life and Loss. And that's in partnership with What's Your Grief, which is a really amazing grief platform. And part of, I think, what's so valuable is having people in the course witness each other and validate, yes, I cried over a pair of socks. Like, no, I have not been able to touch my husband's shoes for over a year. And normalizing that and saying, like, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
Right? The stuff might be not just stuff after this kind of significant loss. So I think not once, but we certainly start by acknowledging what it might mean for you, what it brings up for you. And only then can you actually even consider what your options might be, what you might want to do, right? It starts with that space for accepting, witnessing, noticing with curiosity and compassion, right? What's happening for us.
Yeah. I just thought as you were mentioning those things, there's a broken pair of Jeff's sunglasses. We have when we walk in our front door, there's a rack there that we put our keys on and everything. And we used to all hang up our sunglasses there all the time. and there's still a pair of his, and there's no significance really, but we just don't move them. They're there, and they're broken, and so they can't be used anymore or anything, but they're just hanging there. But so just another example of someone might be out there thinking that it's crazy that they've held on to something, or they're whatever, but it's just not. It's okay, whatever works for you, as long as, again, it's not interfering with people's lives and all of this type of thing, it's okay.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Tom?
Sure.
Like, what do you think the role of those sunglasses are for you currently?
Well, I know that I used to put mine, and I still do, put them right next to his. It's kind of a swirly metal thing that we have them on, so there's 2 spaces there. And I did have another pair there of his, and I gave them to his son. And they may have even been broken too, but I know he took them. And the role for me is just acknowledgement, remembrance. I walk out, I look at them often, and just, again, he's ever present in my mind. So it's not, but sometimes we get on with life, and it's not dishonoring your loved one if there's time periods when you're not thinking of them constantly. And so it's just a pleasant reminder, really. Hi, Jeff. Sometimes I'll just acknowledge him when I walk by, and otherwise they are his. And so he remains here.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. Right.
Yeah.
I call them anchor objects because yes, they anchor meanings, but also they might play the role of, what are called linking objects, that help us to feel connected to our person.
Mm-hmm.
And I also name, like in my book and in my work, about like, oh, it's interesting to consider, like, oh, is it also evidence? Right. For me, my mother's belongings were very much evidence, of different kinds. So sometimes it's evidence that they were here, evidence of how they lived.
Yep.
For some of my clients, some of what's most difficult to really make some decisions about are objects that are evidence of how they died.
Mm.
Right? Some people are hanging onto a hospital bed, even though they don't really want to hang onto the hospital bed, but that hospital bed is playing some role for them currently. And I think giving ourselves that space to look at, like, oh, what role did this play for us, for them? And what role does it play for me now? Gives us that permission, that space to consider, like, oh, okay, actually, what role do I want it to play?
Yeah.
Right?
Encompassing the whole story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is important to the degree that the person can handle it, or want to handle it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, the question of, when is it helpful? I think this comes up a lot, especially with parents who keep their children's rooms exactly as they are, sometimes for years. That's a question that occasionally comes up for me during talks of, like, well, when is it, a problem that someone hasn't cleaned out their husband's closet, for instance, right? And you've alluded to this during this conversation too, of like, well, it's getting in the way of function and whatnot. And I mean, my take on it is, like, who am I to tell a parent what is helpful for them? Right?
Yeah.
That, like, if you've assessed for yourself that this is what's right for you and this is what you need to get out of bed, to function, as well as just to stay connected, to feel connected to them, who am I to say, nope, right? You should be doing something. And I'm not a medical professional, right? So I wouldn't be assessing or diagnosing anyone anyway. But I think there is potential harm when we automatically pathologize normal grief responses.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, I'd be
if
curious
you
to hear
had
your
the
thoughts on that
room, oh,
too.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if you had the room or something, and I would consider it something to maybe be acted upon if they went in the room every day and got into despair and then couldn't function in regular life and those type of things. Because everyone wonders what's healthy grief, what's not, and so I think you can determine that when you look at things like that. Would I go in there and cry? Of course I would, but to go into despair and have it adversely affect your functioning in life is a problem, I would think. So it's just the way to look at things and how they're reacting to certain things. It's the same thing in normal grief, I think. That
Hmm.
to determine whether they do need further help or something like that, or someone may,
Yeah.
so.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It is a
So
wild
I'd love
ride, isn't it?
this landscape that we've been plunged into.
Yeah. You mentioned something
Right?
earlier too, that your mom moved into the dream house. And when I was younger, my
Oh.
dad passed when I was 10. And so we had
Mhm.
moved into his dream house 2 years
Oh.
prior to him passing. So it was a similar time period and everything. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
And can I ask, like, what were the role, obviously you were a child. It was very different circumstances. What did you do with his belongings? Do you interact with them? What role did they play for you?
I don't remember a lot of what happened.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest of 7 kids.
Well,
And my mom obviously was very distraught. There was a time period where everybody just had to take care of her. She was not ready for
yeah.
that at all. He was 48 years old. And
Mhm.
so I don't recall. We did stay in the house for a while. And eventually she remarried and I moved with her. But I don't recall really what happened with,
Yeah.
all the belongings and things at that point. So
Yeah. That makes sense. And apologies if that question was like too
no,
forward.
no, not at all. No, not at all. I'm very open
Yeah.
about all the losses I've experienced, and it's been quite a journey, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been very impressed by how open you've been in your sharing and in your conversations with people on your podcast,
Mm,
right? And uh, I guess I just wanted to name that. I'm like, well, usually I would ask for permission to ask that question.
yeah.
Um, Consent is so important, right?
It is. It is, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm open to a fault in my life, probably. I know that it's been a detriment at times, but I think it's important during this, and I've certainly been learning a lot, and you've helped again today with things that you've mentioned about, um, because people do come to me. I don't work necessarily one on one with people, but they do come to
Mhm.
me because they know what I'm involved in and what I do. I like to provide resources for people. That's my greatest joy, to be able to, and that's what this is all about, to accentuate the beautiful things that people are doing. And I think there's something out there for everybody. So it's exciting to be able to connect them with what's going to work for them. And so I take a lot of pleasure in that. But yeah, and I've made mistakes very early on in sharing about Jeff and what's happened, and didn't realize early on, the first time I told the story, it was on somebody else's podcast. And Jeff's mom and I have been apart since 2008, but she listened to that, and I hadn't considered her in that, and it was hurtful for her. And so um you learn as you go along, and all of that. So, but yeah, when people call, and it helps just to have that sensitivity. And I think one of the greatest things that I heard is you approach this in the deepest kind of love that you can imagine for somebody, to help them in this, or to try and direct them in this. And
Yeah.
that's all the kind of things you talked about, taking into consideration who they are, what their backgrounds are, all these different things, what they're comfortable with, all of those type of things. So it's it's a learning process. I'm hopelessly human and I make big mistakes, but,
Hey, grieving is a learning process, right? Like, as Mary Frances O'Connor says, then in her book, The Grieving Brain, grieving is a learning process.
mhm.
And I think that's true for us as people who support other grievers as well.
Yeah.
Right? We learn from every person we speak to. Everyone's losses are going to be so unique to them, even if there is overlap or things that, are similar with our experiences. And I think there's an aspect of being willing to mess up,
Yeah.
being willing to mess up, being willing to not know, and being willing to acknowledge that sometimes, like, we're not going to know exactly what to say or do. I think that's so important for any of us who are wanting to help people.
Yeah.
So
Honesty.
I appreciate your
Yeah,
openness.
just honesty
Yeah.
in it, and if you don't have an answer, it's all right, and maybe I
Yeah.
can find that for you or something. And yeah, if we're not self-directed, we'll be okay, I think. That's the problem that comes in a lot of times.
Hey, Tom, I've got another question for you.
Sure. Sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
It's not as personal. But I love how in your podcast you talk about some of the woo.
Yeah.
Because I'm not particularly that woo, though I think in doing grief work I've become more woo open.
Mhm.
I did live in Northern California for quite a long time, so I can't totally not have woo. But and like some people, when they think of the objects, they think of, oh, there's energy there or whatnot. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about attachment. Right? I'm very fascinated by this idea of like how attached we are to belongings and to objects. That some of us are like inherently like attached to physical belongings. Some of us are more minimalist, like my husband. Right. And then, of course, there's like attachment styles from our childhoods. But I'm very fascinated by the different ways that grievers have different kinds of attachments to the belongings.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm curious, like, if you have thoughts on that kind of attachment thing, whether it's like from like a more Buddhist kind of view of attachment or spiritual views of attachment or like more woo.
I don't know if I've ever heard that there's an energy attachment or something like that. There certainly could be, because what I believe down to the core level is that we're all energy and everything that exists is energy. So it would make sense that a person's energy is attached to something, an item of theirs, and that would make sense. So if you're then connecting with that person on that level, then perhaps you are then attached to that as well. That would make sense. I'm not saying that's my experience. Mine is much different, and I sometimes wonder about this because my belief in afterlife is very strong, and that we exist beyond this plane and all of our loved ones are here. So that has changed dramatically. And so my attachment to items is not very strong for me, because I always look at all this as peripheral compared to what is the core element of who and what we are. And that is our soul that exists in this collective consciousness, and that we are here in purpose of love and care for one another. And that is the core of it. So the items don't mean as much to me personally, although I could understand how that could be a connection for sure, and how it's described to me, and how science is kind of proving some of these things now about energy and those type of things. That would make a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. So it sounds like for you, the objects are not necessary for you to feel connected to your people
Right.
or for them to even be around, right?
Mhm.
They are not the object.
Yes.
They are not tied to the object.
Although I would not compromise on if people wanted to take certain things away, for sure, and I will hold on to those things forever. But So there are these certain things, remembrances or items that Jeff gave me or those type of things that, same with my mom. I have a silly little Mickey Mouse that's one of those solar things that you put on a dashboard, or whatever, but it has special meaning. The day she passed away, she had about 20 of these on a windowsill, and it was dark when she passed away. So none of them should have been moving. And that was the only one moving when she passed. So, and
gosh, like a bobblehead.
She had an incredible experience at Disney with my sister and her family earlier that year. So, I mean, there's significance there. And so, those type of things, and, but yeah. Now, I think on the energy level, that makes a lot of sense, though. It really does, because you're connected in whatever sense, if you're connecting energies to that type of thing, and that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have the answer either, right? That I think there's a whole range of beliefs. That there are psychics, for instance, who will use objects and belongings. I'm not a psychic. That's not how I work with the objects. To me, and I would say I'm agnostic about afterlife and any kind of belief systems. But I think it's very much about, like, it doesn't matter what I believe. It's what you believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That answer that I gave you just came now. I haven't had any background in it. And again, I do know that sometimes mediums use items, and maybe that's related to that or something, I don't know.
Yeah. I think as a coach, my view is, if part of the beauty of coaching is that it helps you to access something within you, then a meaningful object can be something external that helps you to access something internal. So helping you to access emotions, stories, memories, a feeling of connection. I think that's the way that I personally use the belongings and meaningful objects, in the way that I process my own grief, but also in the way that I work with people. Right. So in that way, it's like, well, is the object helpful for you?
Yeah.
In living the life that you want and in having the relationship that you want with your person? Or is it unhelpful, right? Keeping in like non-clinical terms.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's like, well, I couldn't keep my mother's house. Maybe her spirit wanted me to. Mom, you had a big mortgage on it, right? I would prefer to stay married. I would prefer to live my own life. So I have to let go of the house. But I can transfer, right, the meaning. I can transfer the stories and her memory and like her unconditional love for me that I was so lucky to have. I can transfer that to something else. I can transfer that to my work. I can transfer it into artwork that I commission in her memory. I can transfer that to something that is more portable, that fits more into my life. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing it, because I think that helps me to think through too, of like, oh yeah, what are the different ways we can look at the objects and what we consider might be attached to it, including energy.
Well, you just did a beautiful job of summarizing exactly what you do, and bringing that for people and helping them to hold on. People think so often that you lose them if you lose an item or something like that. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. They're here, and they're here in us. And so you're not going to lose
It hurts.
It hurts.
But yes.
Yeah.
But yes.
So, Charlene, anything else that maybe we didn't cover, or something going on for you now or coming up, or anything like that you'd like to talk about?
Just that it's a continued process. That, like, if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, I missed my chance, it's already been 10 years, or I no longer have the objects, that I believe that curating grief is a practice that you can continue to do, right? That I continue to do it as a way to process grief about my mother, but also maybe about my grandmother. Or right now I'm processing a lot of immigration related grief. because of who I am, because of what's happening in the United States and in other countries around the world, really. So I'm using objects in my life and from my family to help me to name what I'm feeling, to try to make sense of it, to try to make a meaning of it. So I'm putting together like a mini exhibition about immigration-related grief. Again, as an expression of my grief, but also as an invitation for other people to think about theirs, right? And when I say immigration grief, you don't have to be a person of color. You don't have to be like a recent immigrant to experience that. You can be someone who, really valued that as something that was important about your country or your ethos or how you see the world. So, yeah, so I just wanted to name that. That curating can be an ongoing process of processing grief and also relating to your person.
Yeah. So everybody, the website once again is charlenelam.com, and it's Charlene, CharleneLam.com. And that's, will be in the show notes and everything, of course. And, Charlene, thank you so much. You've, given me a lot to think about, and I'm glad about that. Opening that web, as you mentioned earlier. So
I hope it hasn't been too much. And it can be a lot to take in. But I'm so glad you've embraced the concept and engaged in conversation with me and your open sharing. So
you know what you've done. I know I'll be taking on more group sessions and speaking engagements and things like that. And that's in my future for sure. But, I love having these elements to pull from to help people expand their thinking about where they are. And so this will definitely be what you do. And I'll use examples of that through everything that I do. I know I will. So I appreciate that so much.
We each enrich each other's work and our lives, right? So Tom and listeners, you are all invited to my free monthly grief gathering. You can download a sample chapter of my book. Like if you want to go further into it. So you're all invited. Again, invitation.
I may take you up on
do that.
I would love to. That would be a wonderful thing to be part of, I think. Thank you.
Tom, come to Lisbon.
Oh, now you're talking.
Grief retreat in Lisbon.
Awesome. Yeah.
Planting that seed.
Because winter's coming here now. So, I mean, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Don't come here in winter. It's cold.
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
Not the weather, but the buildings.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Maybe. So, Charlene, thanks again so much. And looking forward to getting this out there and pursuing things further with the things that you're doing too. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.